So nice. So for the new strategic trade policies and protective effects. In the reality, the majority enterprises are facing the imperfect competition market, while the market competition becomes a game among the minor few firms. Whoever occupies the market will gain the excess profit. A country's external trade policy not only emphasizes obtaining a certain economic benefit and the protecting of the growth and development of the domestic industry, but through the government intervention, it changed the firm's strategic behavior, developed the domestic goods exports to make domestic firms gain on the global markets. The oligopoly export subsidy was first proposed by the Spencer and Brown. The theory points out that in some industry there are only few firms participating in the competition because the number of the firm is few, it is impossible to form a perfect competition market where they internationally compete for this excess profit. In principle, a government can transfer the excess profit from the foreign firms to domestic firms via changing the game principles. If you heard about the game theory, there is the Kuhnot game, where the simplest is to subsidize the domestic firm and to prevent the foreign rivals from investing and manufacturing, so that the domestic profit exceeds the subsidies. Regardless of the influence of the consumers, this policy improves domestic national wealth, while based on the losses of other countries, the market price is lower than the price in the pre-subsidy condition, where the market supply is higher than in the pre-subsidy condition. The consumers obtain more commodity at a lower price and benefit from the world trade war. The third country's welfare improves. The economical scale and from the research and development infusion and learning effects and import protections. The one form of the So there is one form of strategic policies import tariffs. Its theoretical grounds are the economies of scale, research and development, infusion, and learning effects. The marginal cost of the two firms on the ever market is denoted by this. The downward sloping is by denoted. You can see from the video, the camera, the Kuhnot game of the two firms on every world market, and is denoted by this downward sloping curve. That is also the marginal cost curve. Is decreasing function of the total output. The x-axis denotes the aggregate output of the two firms, And the domestic protective policies impact on the domestic aggregate sales volume. And there are three reasons of this. First is of this effects, subsidy effect. First is the existence of the internal economies of scale. That is static and move along the average cost curve. That means if the production output amount more, the more the output, the less the average costs. And also existing of the learning effects. A firm average cost decline when it accumulates the production experience. As the accumulation of the production volume, the average cost declines. That is so-called the dynamic increasing return. The downward shifting of the learning curve. The research development infusion used by firm to reduce costs is the increasing function of the profit. The firm profit is the increasing function of the output. Therefore, the output is linked with the cost, when the output increases, the cost decreases. The intermediate step are the through the intermission media by the profit and the research and development investments. The new protectionism believes that under the perfect competition and the economies of scale, the government may use the import tariffs or quota to expel the foreign firms and to help the domestic firms to gain their more market share. It also holds that the subsidizing domestic firms' production is equivalent to the research and development. And the research development is an important supportive target of the trade strategy. If the net benefit is big enough, the firm has enough automotive to boost RD without the government's stimulation. Externality of the RD is also called the knowledge spillover. That makes the firm less incentive to engage in the RD. The spillover increases the social benefits, but this increment only becomes there for firms to engage in the research and development. If the firm's benefit is less than its research and development cost, this becomes a type of market malfunction. If this negative effect is significant enough, the government intervention is taken for granted. Measures such as subsidies or trade protection can be taken to increase the firm's benefit from the research and development, so that the government enhances the social welfare. This is the ground of the strategic trade policy to support the domestic R&D. According to the reasons of the margin cost curve declining with the output, the protective tariff is called tariff to promote exports through the economies of scale. The tariff to promote exports through the R&D, and tariffs to promote exports through the learning effects. The beggar the neighbor, this type of tariffs and quota policy is also called the beggar the neighbor because it sacrifices other countries' benefit to improve its own welfare. The tariffs and the quota are all this type of beggar the neighbor policies. The main issue of the policies is that it triggering the trade war and create the high cost of impairing the benefit from all aspects of involved parties. If the domestic firm and the foreign firms are considering manufacturing of commodity with strong internal economies of scale, due to the limit of production scale, two firms can't be supported to manufacture at the same time. If the domestic firm produces and the foreign firm doesn't, the domestic firm will gain. However, if the foreign firm doesn't compensate or earn, its profit becomes zero. If the foreign firm produces but the domestic firm doesn't, the foreign firm gains but domestic firm's profit is zero. If both doesn't produce, they will earn zero profits. The optimal strategy is that it doesn't produce if the rival produces, and it produces if its rival doesn't. If both are in the same situation, both at the decision stage, the result is inconclusive.